Hiding down here again, little lady? Jake murmured, a familiar warmth in his voice despite the feigned exasperation. Watch out, your mother, Miss Eleanor, will seal off this entire marketplace if she finds out. Chloe pouted, stepping out from her hiding spot. Don't call me little lady, she whined playfully, and Mom won't know. Besides, I found something way more interesting than all your scrap metal combined. Seeing Jake's apparent disinterest, as he merely raised an eyebrow and returned to his work, Chloe approached. She placed an old, brittle parchment scroll, tied with a delicate silver string, directly onto his cluttered workbench. I found it in the deepest section of the family library, she whispered, her voice full of mystery. A place no one has ever been allowed into before. This time, Jake truly paid attention. He quickly wiped his oil-stained hands on a rag and carefully picked up the scroll. As he slowly unrolled it, faded ink lines, softened by time, revealed a map unlike any nautical chart or city blueprint he had ever seen. In the center was an intricate drawing resembling a violently churning vortex, surrounded by ancient characters he couldn't decipher. "What is this?" Jake asked, his voice filled with astonishment. Chloe leaned closer, her eyes sparkling. "It's not a place," she whispered, as if revealing a sacred secret. "It's an energy source. The elders call it the Heartstorm." The name echoed in the quiet of the workshop. The Heartstorm, the legendary source of power that had kept the entire city of Aethelburg suspended in the sky for centuries. Jake had always thought it was just a legend, a fairy tale to lull children to sleep. "I thought so too," Chloe said, as if reading his mind. "Until I found this. It's real, Jake. And this map, it shows the way." Just then, a strong gust of wind suddenly swept into the workshop, scattering several blueprints across the table. Jake quickly held the precious map with both hands. He looked out at the clear blue sky, but a vague sense of unease stirred within him. "Put it away, Chloe," he said, his voice suddenly serious. "Some legends are best left undisturbed. This could be very dangerous." Seeing the genuine concern on Jake's face, Chloe nodded. She carefully rolled up the map, her mischievous smile fading. "I just wanted to show you first," she said softly, then quickly slipped out of the workshop, disappearing as quickly as she had arrived. Jake stood alone amidst the metal and machinery, but his mind was no longer there. The feel of the ancient parchment and the name Heartstorm lingered, along with an ominous premonition creeping into his heart. He put down his wrench and walked towards the large workshop window, where the open air rushed in. From here, his gaze encompassed a part of the world he now feared would be disrupted. Below and above him, the flying city of Aethelburg emerged a vibrant testament to a forgotten miracle. It wasn't a single landmass, but a cluster of islands suspended in the sky, connected by intricately carved marble and brass bridges. On the highest tiers, the elegant spires of the noble skyborn clan rose above the clouds, pristine and ethereal. Below, clinging to the rocky faces of smaller islands, were the bustling markets and noisy workshops of the humans, where life was more vibrant and mundane. All were supported by an invisible force, an ancient energy current the inhabitants called the Heartstorm. This energy was unseen, yet everyone felt its presence through every gentle breeze that uplifted the city, through the mystical light emanating from the guiding crystals at night. The existence of Aethelburg was a delicate symphony of technology and magic, a beautiful yet incredibly dangerous balance, entirely dependent on the heartbeat of a core that not everyone knew. That anxiety clung to Jake in the days that followed. He tried to bury himself in his work, in the familiar sounds of hammering and the smell of machine oil, to ward off the ominous premonitions, but the image of the map and his own warning kept swirling in his mind. His forced concentration was broken by the workshop door being forcefully pushed open. Sam, a young mechanic from the neighboring workshop, rushed in, pale-faced and breathless. "Jake!" Sam panted. "Have you heard? About little Lady Chloe?" Jake stopped, the sound of his hammer silenced. He turned around, his heart tightening with a sense of dread. "Chloe? What happened to her?" "She's missing!" Sam said, trying to catch his breath. "They say she flew too close to the city's edge, got sucked down by an atmospheric vortex into the dark clouds below. The Skyborn family just announced it. They're calling it an accident and said they'd handle the search themselves." At that, the hammer in Jake's hand slipped, falling to the floor with a loud clang. He stood frozen as Sam rushed off to spread the news to others. The workshop suddenly became terrifyingly silent. A vehement protest echoed in his head. An atmospheric vortex? Absurd. The weather had been excellent for days. Moreover, Chloe was one of the most talented pilots he knew. She would never make such a rookie mistake. His gaze fixed on an empty spot on his workbench, precisely where Chloe had placed the ancient map a few days prior. The map, Heartstorm, and then she disappeared. This coincidence was too perfect to be true. "Not an accident," he murmured to himself, his voice firm. "It was a trap. Someone lured her." That determination transformed into action. That very night, Jake began his own investigation. Disregarding the baseless rumors in the marketplace, he sought out the only place that could hold the truth: the air traffic control station at the city's edge, which recorded all flight activity and weather data. Using his reputation as a former pilot, he convinced the duty officer to let him review the atmospheric sensor logs from the time Chloe was supposedly lost. The results were exactly as he predicted. The numbers clearly displayed on the screen. No atmospheric vortices were recorded. The weather was perfectly stable. The story of a tragic accident was merely a poorly constructed lie. But that wasn't enough. He needed concrete proof. The next morning, Jake took his small reconnaissance glider and flew to the area where the accident supposedly occurred. He skimmed the surface of the clouds, his pilot-trained eyes scanning every detail. There was no debris from Chloe's ship. Instead, an odd object caught his eye. A sharp black piece of metal, floating, caught in a cluster of energy crystals. He carefully retrieved it. The metal fragment was cold and of a design utterly unlike anything manufactured in Aethelburg. It lacked the graceful curves of skyborn technology, nor did it bear the pragmatic marks of human craftsmanship. Instead, it exuded a cruel, deadly efficiency. And on its surface, a faint symbol he had seen in old documents. A dragon coiled around a broken sword. A chill ran down his spine. That symbol belonged to only one person, Marcus Blackwood. The name was not unfamiliar in Aethelburg. Marcus had once been a nobleman, but had been exiled years ago for his extremist and cruel ideologies. He believed that Aethelburg's reliance on the ancient energy source was a weakness, a chain preventing them from dominating the world below. He had always yearned to break the old order and establish a new world according to his will, a world ruled by steel strength and technology. All the pieces now fit together with terrifying precision. Marcus knew about the Heartstorm. He had set a trap for Chloe to seize the map. His goal was not merely to kidnap a young lady, but to strike directly at the heart that kept the entire city afloat. He wanted to claim that energy source to destroy Aethelburg, to prove his insane ideology. Once the horrifying truth was clear, Jake wasted no more time. He rushed back to his workshop, and its usual quiet was immediately shattered by the clanging of metal. 3 days later, Sam, a young mechanic, stealthily entered the workshop with some food, nearly tripping over the piles of metal strewn across the floor. He found Jake, covered in oil, his eyes bloodshot from lack of sleep, straining to tighten a large bolt onto an unusually thick section of the ship's hull. "Good heavens, Jake!" Sam exclaimed. "Haven't you slept in 3 days?" "No time," Jake grumbled, without looking up. "What in the world are you building?" Sam asked curiously, stepping closer. "It doesn't look like anything I've ever seen. Why is the hull so thick?" Jake finally paused, wiping sweat from his brow with the back of his hand, leaving a black smudge. "To withstand pressure," he replied curtly, "and acid storms." Sam froze, dropping his bag of bread to the ground. "Acid storms? Pressure?" he stammered. "Don't tell me you're planning to." "I'm going down into the dark clouds," Jake stated plainly, his voice resolute, looking directly into Sam's eyes. "Are you insane?" Sam yelled. "The Skyborn family's flight team wouldn't dare go down there. That's suicide." "The family's flight team is wasting time searching for an accident that never happened," Jake growled. "Chloe is alive, Sam, and she's down there." With that, he returned to his work as if the conversation was over. He flipped a switch on the control panel. Immediately, with a sharp whiz, the metal wings folded in, transforming the ship into an arrow. He pressed the button again, and they spread out. "It's not for catching the wind," Jake explained, seeing Sam's puzzled expression. "It's for piercing through it." Next, he moved to the central component, where a large crystal block was held within a metal cage. He carefully connected the last wires, and the crystal began to emit a faint blue light accompanied by the soft hum of energy. That's the lightning core from your old blueprints, isn't it?" Sam whispered, awestruck. "I thought it was just theoretical." "It'll give me a boost when I need it," Jake said. "Or clear a path if something gets in the way." When everything was complete, Jake stepped back, taking in the overall view of his ship. It was crude, angular, full of unpolished welds. Sam looked from the ship to Jake, his eyes no longer conveying dissuasion but a mixture of awe and fear. "Jake," Sam said softly, "this isn't a glider, it's a monster." Jake didn't reply. He just looked at the monster he had created. It wasn't beautiful, but it was his only hope. The grinding of metal as the ship slid off the edge of the workshop floor and plunged into the darkness. No farewell. Above, Aethelburg glittered like an artificial constellation, but Jake didn't look back. He gripped the controls tightly, pointing the ship's nose straight down into the abyss below, where the clouds were no longer fluffy white, but churned into a boiling ocean of black and gray. "Here we go," he murmured, as if to reassure himself. The moment the ship crossed the boundary, a violent jolt nearly threw him from his seat. The gentle whisper of the wind transformed into a savage roar. Everything shook violently, the bolts on the control panel seeming to want to pop out. A piercing beep, beep, beep blared from the pressure warning system. Sudden bolts of lightning tore through the darkness directly in front of the ship, illuminating a small vortex forming. Jake gritted his teeth, yanking the joystick hard, the ship swerving to dodge it by a hair's breadth. Immediately after, sizzling sounds began to emanate from the cockpit roof. Acid rain. The ship was corroding. "Just you wait," Jake growled. "I didn't build you to melt here." He slammed down on a switch. With a whoosh, the wings folded tight against the hull, turning the ship into an arrow that shot through the storm. Speed surged, and he pierced through the dense clouds. Suddenly, the motion sensor screen flashed red continuously. A massive dark shadow darted past the starboard side. What was that? Another lightning bolt flashed, and this time he saw it clearly. A colossal eel-like creature made of static electricity and shadow was hurtling straight towards him, its mouth a swirling vortex of energy. With no time to think, his hand slammed onto the lightning core activation button. A deafening ZZZZZT resounded, the entire ship vibrating as energy accumulated. A blinding blue electrical discharge shot from the ship's nose, striking the creature. It shrieked a mournful cry and disintegrated into the mist. Having just escaped danger, he realized the ship had entered an unusually calm area, like the eye of a storm. And there, amidst the void, an incredible sight unfolded, taking his breath away. A colossal, pitch-black fortress, woven from the very dark winds and frozen lightning bolts, was suspended in midair. "No way," Jake whispered. But even more horrifying were the golden, pure, and powerful energy currents, which he immediately recognized being siphoned from the surrounding space into the center of the fortress. That was the Heartstorm, the lifeblood of Aethelburg. He carefully maneuvered the ship to approach the fortress's wind wall. Through a window made of dark crystal, his heart almost stopped. Chloe was there, imprisoned within a shimmering energy sphere. Beside her, Marcus Blackwood stood, one hand placed on a strange device draining the city's energy, a sinister smile on his lips. Seeing Chloe imprisoned and Marcus draining Ethelburg's life force, a cold fury surged within Jake. He knew he couldn't attack head-on. This fortress was made of wind and lightning. A direct assault would be suicide. He had to use its own strengths against it. An idea sparked in his mind. If he couldn't break through the wall, he would break what was creating it. He pulled hard on the controls, backing the ship away, maintaining a safe distance from the fortress. He observed closely, noticing the main swirling currents converging at the base of the structure, like roots anchoring it. That was the weak point. "All right, sweetheart," Jake murmured to his ship, his hand resting on the lightning core activation button. "Let's see what you can do." He circled the fortress with the ship, not to attack, but to create a disturbance. As soon as he flew past one of the main swirling currents, he abruptly extended the wings wide, simultaneously activating a small thrust from the lightning core in the opposite direction of the current. The effect was immediate. The swirling current was disrupted, losing its stability. The entire colossal fortress began to tremble as if an earthquake had struck. From inside, Jake could hear groaning sounds as the wind walls weakened. Pressing his advantage, he repeated the action 2 more times at other critical points. The entire fortress now swayed violently. The dark wind walls began to flicker, some even disappearing for a second or two before reforming. "This is our chance." Jake spotted a temporary opening in the wall and didn't hesitate to push the throttle to maximum. The ship shot through the gap before it could close. He landed in a swaying wind corridor, the engine noise completely drowned out by the roar of the storm he himself had created. He jumped out of the ship, pulling a small multi-tool that looked like pliers from his pocket. He ran along the corridor, his heart pounding in his chest. He reached the central chamber, where he saw Marcus busy adjusting the machine, his face contorted in a scowl due to the unusual shaking. Chloe saw him, her eyes wide with astonishment and hope. Jake signaled her to be silent and then sneaked behind the energy sphere imprisoning her. He found the control unit at the base, poked at it with his tool, causing a short circuit. Sparks flew. The energy sphere flickered and then vanished. Chloe was free. "Jake!" she whispered, rushing to his side. "Quickly!" Jake grabbed her hand, pulling her towards the ship. But just then, an icy voice rang out from behind them, overpowering even the roar of the storm. "Did you think you could leave so easily, mechanic?" They turned around. Marcus stood there, his eyes burning with furious anger. Jake's plan had been exposed. Marcus raised a hand. Immediately, the golden energy currents being siphoned from the Heartstorm redirected, flowing straight towards him. The air around Marcus became dense, glowing brightly. He needed no weapon, for he himself had become one. "Chloe, get to the ship!" Jake yelled, pushing her back. Marcus swung his hand. A whip made of glowing golden energy lashed through the air, creating a horrifying hiss. Jake quickly lunged aside, dodging it. The whip struck the floor, leaving a long charred black mark. Jake knew instantly that a single direct hit would reduce him to ashes. He had no chance in a direct power struggle. He threw the pliers in his hand towards Marcus, but it was blocked by an invisible energy shield and fell harmlessly to the ground. He had to use his head. His eyes darted around. He saw the energy flowing from the Heartstorm into Marcus's machine and then to Marcus himself. Then he looked towards his own ship, where the lightning core was emitting a steady blue light. Two different energy sources. A crazy but hopeful idea sparked in his head. Not confrontation, but resonance. "Get in!" he shouted at Chloe, pointing towards the open ship door. As Marcus prepared his next attack, Jake grabbed Chloe's hand, and both lunged into the cockpit. A massive energy sphere launched by Marcus struck the ship's side just as the door closed, sending the entire vessel skidding a long distance, metal screeching. "Hold on tight!" Jake yelled, his hands flying across the control panel. He didn't try to take off. Instead, he flipped a series of switches, bypassing all safety limits of the energy core. "Jake, what are you doing?" Chloe asked in panic as the ship began to shake even more violently than it had outside. The lightning core in the center of the cockpit changed from blue to blinding white, emitting an increasingly high-pitched whine. "It's going to explode." "It has to," Jake gritted out, his eyes fixed on Marcus through the reinforced glass. Outside, Marcus raised both hands to the sky, gathering an enormous amount of energy to unleash a finishing blow. The very moment he was about to unleash it, Jake slammed a red button on the control panel. Now, the ship did not fire a lightning bolt. Instead, it released all its overloaded energy as an invisible shock wave. There was no loud explosion, only a high-pitched, tearing AAA-atch sound. When Jake's white-blue energy wave collided with the golden energy stream of the Heartstorm that Marcus was controlling, a violent resonance occurred. The golden energy stream suddenly became uncontrollable, no longer obeying Marcus's will. His energy-draining machine sparked and then died. The flow of energy was disrupted. Marcus screamed in anger and pain as the power slipped from his grasp. The wind fortress, losing its stable energy source, began to disintegrate. The dark wind walls flickered and then vanished. Jake used the last bit of the ship's energy to blast out of the collapsing structure. Behind them, the golden energy stream of the Heartstorm, now liberated, returned to its gentle state, its pulse once again upholding the city of Aethelburg. The glider, depleted of energy, limped and sputtered back towards Aethelburg. It was no longer the mighty monster, but a wounded warrior trying to make its way home. The hull was riddled with scorch marks from acid rain and energy attacks. As it appeared in the city's sky, the Skyborn family's patrol squadron immediately surrounded it, but they quickly lowered their weapons when they recognized Chloe's makeshift signal flag tied to the ship's side. The engine almost died as Jake landed the ship on the main landing pad of the Skyborn estate. The landing was far from gentle. It touched down with a heavy thud and skidded a long way across the polished marble, leaving a long black streak. As soon as the cockpit door popped open, Chloe rushed out. "Mom!" Eleanor, her usual stern expression completely replaced by intense worry, ran towards her daughter. Mother and daughter embraced in emotional silence. The elders and guards of the clan stood around, sighing with relief. After a moment, Chloe pulled away from her mother, turned, and pointed towards Jake, who had just stepped out of the ship, his clothes singed, his face streaked with oil. "Mom," she said, her voice still trembling but resolute. "It's Jake. He saved me. He saved all of us." All eyes turned to the mechanic. He stood there, out of place and exhausted amidst the opulence of the estate, looking completely out of place. Some guards reflexively placed their hands on their sword hilts, wary of the stranger, but Eleanor raised her hand, signaling them to stop. She released Chloe and slowly advanced towards Jake. She looked at him from head to toe, then at his crude but resilient glider. She saw the exhaustion, courage, and intelligence shining in the young man's eyes. Her usual strict and reserved demeanor melted away, leaving only profound respect. The Skyborn family, and this entire city of Aethelburg, Eleanor stated, her voice echoing across the landing pad, clear and solemn, "Owe you a life, Jake Veyron." She did not call him the mechanic or commoner. She called him by his name. Then, to the astonishment of everyone, including Jake himself, Eleanor, the noble matriarch and head of the Skyborn family, slowly bowed, performing a formal salute. It wasn't a simple thank you. It was an official acknowledgement, an absolute respect for his courage and ingenuity, an act that erased all boundaries of status and lineage in that very moment. In the weeks that followed, her gratitude transformed into genuine respect and trust. Their meetings were no longer interrogations by a noblewoman of a commoner, but gradually became discussions between two individuals who shared the burden of protecting Aethelburg. Eleanor often invited Jake to the estate, not for parties, but to review the city's defense systems together. She listened as he explained mechanics, structural weaknesses, and ideas for improving patrol gliders. Conversely, Jake also began to see a different person in Eleanor. Behind her stern exterior was a leader devoted to her people, a mother who constantly feared losing her only daughter. They found in each other an understanding that no one else could provide. The real turning point came one afternoon when Eleanor visited Jake's workshop. She stood quietly at the doorway, observing him work, his calloused yet skilled hands assembling a complex engine. The smell of machine oil and metal did not bother her. For the first time, Jake saw her without formal attire, and in that moment, he didn't see a noblewoman, but just a woman. Their conversation that day no longer revolved around city matters, but about their personal dreams and burdens. Their relationship was no longer a secret, though no one spoke of it. They were often seen walking together along the bridges connecting the flying islands, discussing something. Whispers began, but they were not of opposition, but of curiosity and admiration. Finally, to officially honor the city's hero, a grand ceremony was held in Aethelburg's central plaza. Jake, in formal attire that he felt utterly awkward in, stood on the elevated platform, self-conscious under the gaze of thousands of eyes. When the name Jake Veyron, Protector of Aethelburg, was announced, he hesitated for a moment before stepping forward. Just then, he felt a gentle but firm hand take his. It was Eleanor. She stood beside him, not as the head of the clan, but as a companion. She said nothing, just looked at him and gave a slight nod. Jake gently squeezed her hand, feeling her warm support. Together, they stepped forward. That simple gesture, a public clasp of hands before everyone, was more powerful than any declaration. The plaza fell silent for a second, then erupted in resounding applause. It was an affirmation, a celebration of a new bond, a harmony not just between two people, but between two strata of the city. The title Protector was not merely an empty designation. For Jake, it was a responsibility. He realized that saving the city once was not enough. He had to ensure it would never again be threatened in such a way. True strength lay not in the Heartstorm, but in the people who could protect and sustain it. A few months later, his old, cramped workshop was replaced. With the patronage of the Skyborn family, a spacious and airy academy for crafting aerial vehicles was built on one of the central islands, a place easily accessible to both humans and Skyborn. The interior space was always filled with light and the sounds of creation. The hammering of human apprentices blended with the soft hum from the Skyborn's energy crystals. Jake did not stand on a podium like a stern teacher. He moved among the students, his hands still oily, patiently guiding each one. The durability of the metal must harmonize with the flow of energy, he explained to a group of young apprentices, which included a human boy listening intently beside a graceful Skyborn girl. Don't rely solely on brute force, and don't depend too much on magic. Combine them. Chloe was also a frequent presence here. She was no longer the little lady who used to sneak out. She had become an invaluable teaching assistant, helping the Skyborn, who were accustomed to elegance, understand the beauty in human practical machinery. She smiled as she watched the human boy and the Skyborn girl assembling a glider wing together, debating animatedly but ultimately finding a solution that neither of them could have conceived alone. One afternoon, Eleanor visited the academy. She gave no prior notice, simply standing quietly at the doorway, observing the bustling scene inside. She saw Jake laughing, a genuine smile as he praised a small glider model crafted by an apprentice. She saw cooperation, curiosity, and the joy of learning erasing old prejudices. Jake sensed her presence and walked over. Together, they stood looking out at the wide courtyard, where practice gliders soared through the blue sky. I once thought Ethelburg's strength came from bloodline and ancient secrets, Eleanor said softly, her voice no longer distant but full of warmth. But I was wrong. Jake looked at the young, hopeful faces in the academy, then up at the vast sky. Not bloodline, nor power, he said softly, his hand gently taking hers. But these hands, it is creativity and courage that will keep Aethelburg flying forever in the sky. And under the brilliant golden sunlight, amidst laughter and the whirring of machines, a new legacy was created. A legacy built not of marble or magic, but of collaboration, knowledge, and the brave heart of the mechanic from long ago.